we wanted to front load with the remote portion because that's how the district is starting. So we will be asking participants, attendees to drop questions as we move through this evening into the chat thread. We will be monitoring those, and we're going to try to answer as many questions with the information at the start of the meeting, but toward the end, we will start answering those questions. I do realize this is an elementary focused meeting. And if we have time, you know, we want to keep this to an hour, 15, hour, 20 minutes. We could take a couple questions on middle school and high school. Middle school town halls will be running tomorrow, 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. with high school following on Thursday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. as well. All right, so let's do some introductions tonight. On the panelist list, we have Ashley Levanway, Administrative Assistant in the Superintendent's Office, kind of our host, and she will be helping keep the eye on the chat thread for questions. And we also have John Berlin waving right now. Looks like he's on his deck at home. John is our later elementary principal. And I think this morning I let you all introduce yourselves. I'm talking way too much already. John, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. It's good that you're here with us. I'm at the later I'm the principal there. I'm going into my third year at Matawan and enjoying every minute of it. This is certainly challenging times, and we thank you all for your support and patience.
Thank you, John. And let me back up. Ashley, it looks like Ashley is in the office tonight. Good to see you. Thanks for your time this evening. And we have Jim Owen. Go ahead, Jim. Jim, it looks like you're muted.
Am I muted?
There you go. Well,
I got him.
Okay, there we go.
Sorry about that. I had that problem this morning. Yeah, Jim Owen, I'm first year at Matawan Early Elementary. Not my first year in education. I've been doing this for a while, but first year with you guys. It's been a great start. Crazy time to switch jobs. I don't mind it. My wife thinks I'm crazy to switch jobs and do this in the middle of all this, but it's interesting times everywhere. So it's looking forward to work with you and your kids.
Thank you, Jim. We also have Jay Larner. I think Jay is audio only. And yep. Jay is our new assistant superintendent. Jay, why don't you introduce yourself there real quick?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Really excited to have so many people participating in this town hall tonight. I apologize, I don't have my video going. I'm participating remotely as I'm dealing with children's activities at the same time. So really looking forward to the conversations today and all the questions. So we have a lot of great information to provide about our plan and look forward to the discussion.
Jay is new to the district as of August 1 and is overseeing curriculum assessment and special programming. And my name is Randy, superintendent here, and I've been on the job since July 1st, and just happy to be here tonight with you. Just a reminder for those joining, we are at about 175 attendees. We will be getting to a Q&A. We're going to present some information here at the beginning, so there'll just be a little bit of us talking and you listening, but we're asking people to drop questions as we go into the chat thread, and we will work through those questions after we get information provided. We're hoping that the information up front will answer some of the questions potentially that are out there from our parents and community members. And I just want to check one thing here. Okay, the chat is enabled, correct?
It should be.
Okay, we just probably don't have any questions in there yet, which is fine. We haven't really started, so it looks like it's available on my end. Okay, I'm going to screen share two documents with you this evening. We spent a little time just working through these documents, and I know that sometimes when we Yes, Amy, I'll answer that question. We are recording this and we'll be posting these broadcasts through a YouTube channel. Great question. So the tape is rolling right now. So I'm going to screen share a couple documents, and I know that's going to reconfigure folks' screens on the other side. I do apologize for that, but I do want to look through a couple different pages here of information. And so stand by here momentarily. I will share a screenshot with you here. All right, here we go. Hang on. Okay, so you should hopefully see a blue and gold page with an arrow, kind of a timeline. Jim, do you see that populated? Okay, I see your video right now. That's why I'm asking you. Okay, so we do want to work quickly through the plan here this evening. And this is the same content that was sent out in the overview letter. It just looks a little bit different, and there's a little bit more detail in this plan. And after we work through this, we are going to get into sample scheduling for the remote plan for early and later elementary, and provide families with more detail on the plans that are coming together. We will be many questions received about technology, and is the district providing technology? We absolutely are providing technology, devices, and Wi-Fi access cards. And there was a survey link that was sent out this past week, Thursday or Friday, that was a technology survey. If families are in need of a device or Wi-Fi hotspot, please fill that survey out. You can also, in a little bit later on the second page, there'll be a number and email. The documents you see tonight will be posted this week. But you know, some families have asked, based on the letter indicated that families that can display a need for technology will be given the technology to use. And there's no criteria there. If you merely are indicating to the district that you need technology, you need a device, you need a hotspot, we're going to work with you to provide that. That really has already started. Distribution has started as soon as the information has started coming in Friday. Looking at this timeline, you can see October 17th through the 21st. That really is at the very latest when we want to have the technology distributed, which is next week. So when we think about the stages, I want to clarify some of the terminology. You'll notice phase up here. Phase, you've got phase, and then you've got also stage. Phase refers to the Michigan Roadmap to Safe Schools that is set by the state. We are currently in phase 4. The majority of the conversation tonight will center around phase 4. We are planning on being in phase 4, and I will occasionally note differences in this plan if we were to move to phase 3. But right now we have the Michigan set phase, and then we have the district set, MCS set stage. So we do have 3 stages that we're working through. And I will refer to a task force several times tonight. The task force was made up of about 40 staff, teachers, administrators, deans, secretaries, support staff, transportation, food service, special education, support folks from across the district have spent a lot of time developing, reviewing data, developing this plan. And so I'll often refer to this group tonight. Let me just kind of jump into August 24th would be a stage A, full remote start. And by now, this plan's been out, roughly a week. And the intent here on the full remote start really is the result of data received from surveys, local data on safety, in those surveys were parent and staff feedback. And this morning, I did briefly address, many questions that have come up regarding the differences between parent and staff feedback. And I will just tonight address some of these data questions. We do want to focus on getting as much detail out about the plans themselves, but I do know there were questions about some of the data points in that initial letter. We did survey parents, we did survey staff, we did take into account both of those data sets, and we did also look at these criteria down here in the lower left-hand corner based on Michigan roadmap phasing and also the risk assessment by county. And really, this plan is the result of all of that data and making a determination that the task force felt that the safest way to start the year would be a graduated release to face-to-face. And, the timeline that you're seeing tonight, we would consider a rather brisk timeline. Looking at other districts that are starting in full remote, the timelines are much longer. The task force had much discussion on the target dates, and we felt it was very important to start remotely and gradually release kids back into the classroom environment, but on a timeline that was brisk, dare I say aggressive. There have been several questions that came up this morning and in surveys since then, asking if these dates are real. Is the district really desiring to stick to these deadlines, and will we really be back to face-to-face? The short answer to that is yes, these are real deadlines. We want to be back to face-to-face. We're trying to strike a reasonable balance with the majority of parents that want face-to-face and balance that with safety concerns. And we felt that this gradual release was a reasonable middle ground. So there has been question about the district ignoring parents, ignoring feedback. That couldn't be more to the contrary. We reviewed all of the survey data. We poured through the 2,600 responses. We had lots of discussion on that. And it's our hope that the district doesn't take the gradual release to face-to-face as us ignoring parents. That really impacted the timeline to reentry and kept it at a very brisk pace. Instead of going a full 9 weeks in remote or a full semester in remote, as some schools are doing. So we are looking to stay to these deadlines. The only thing that would change that would be a movement to phase 3, and that's out of our control. If the governor moves us to phase 3 or requires full remote instruction for an extended period of time, that would obviously limit our ability to have kids on property. The only other piece that we would watch closely from an objective standpoint is the risk level that is being assessed by county. And we are looking at Van Buren and Kalamazoo and basing that on the Van Buren Cass Health Department or District Health Department information and Kalamazoo County Health Department information. We're currently at a moderate or medium high risk factor. And really, if that was moved to a high risk or the numbers that are being reported showed, a dramatic uptick in cases, that would potentially impact the deadlines. But other than that, we are planning to stick to these deadlines. You will notice as we work through this, there are trigger dates to make decisions and then trigger dates to execute to the next stage. And I want to get into that right now. So under a full remote start, you will see here momentarily when we look at a draft schedule for elementary, we really tried to structure this as close to a traditional day as possible, but really flexibility is the name of the game. We understand that this is a burden on families and other things may come up during the day like they normally would in a traditional classroom. Kids are absent, they're feeling ill, or there are family challenges happening, we want to be extremely flexible, but we did want to provide a structured overview. It was very clear from the spring survey data that parents desired, and actually staff did as well, more structure in the remote model. And I think you will see that as we work into the schedule at the next slide. But this is a full remote start. It is Madawan curriculum, Madawan outcomes. The programming is being run by Madawan staff. Certified teachers, support staff will be involved. We'll get into that here in a minute. Structured learning, like we said, we will be monitoring attendance. And again, with flexibility, right? We want to support parents by giving them the ability to talk with their children about a structured day, about following routines, about getting up at a set time in the morning, helping out, getting to bed at a set time, and having, very short, age-appropriate blocks of live instruction. And we also realize, again, that we need flexibility in that as a way to support parents as well. This will be mainly live instruction. We would call that synchronous instruction as opposed to asynchronous. There will be time for asynchronous or offline enrichment and work time. And again, that'll become a little more clear when we look at the schedule. There will be strict adherence to IEPs. That has been a question routinely coming up. That's probably the most asked question right now that we're seeing is how will special education be handled? How will IEP goals be handled? 504 plans, or just in general, kids that were receiving what we would call tier 2 intervention supports, typically in math and reading. And I do think we have some creative ways to keep these supports in place, but we will be adhering to IEPs and 504s and looking to support at-risk tier 2 populations as well. Access to food service will run throughout all phases and stages, just like it did last year. In a stage A, though, food will have to be picked up at certain predetermined locations. It will be prepackaged, much like it was in the spring, and we will probably have multiple days of food per pickup, so parents aren't having to come back every day. For the sake of discussion, though, I'm going to talk about this in terms of the trigger deadlines. So we get to September 4th, a decision will be made by that September 4th, and we're moving ahead to stage 2 that has been decided, and then stage 2 will roll out September 21st. So with that, we'll carry on to stage B. I'm sorry, I said stage 2. And this is the hybrid stage. And I want to say right up front that we don't have all the details worked out for the hybrid stage. It was very clear in the morning meeting. We had quite a few questions around what is this really going to look like? And I think it was coming from the place of parents planning. And we understand that. And we're going to provide as much detail tonight, but we're also going to give you some deadlines on when we're going to have the details of stage B worked out and communicated out as quickly as possible. But for the sake of just moving forward here in conversation, the hybrid stage B would involve 1 to 2 days per week on site for young 5s through 5th grade, and 1 to 2 full days per week on site for 6th through 12th grade. And the big question right now that schools doing hybrid are struggling with is, on a hybrid schedule, do you split the student body up and do an A-B, where group A, half the kids come in on a Monday, Wednesday, or Monday, Tuesday. There's normally one off day for deep cleaning, and then group B, the other half of the kids come in on a Thursday, Friday, or a Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday's off. So you split that student body to decrease the number of kids on site. The other option is that you bring all kids back on, but you're gradually releasing them in both models, giving students time to acclimate to mask wearing and directional indicators for social distancing, and giving kids and really staff, for that matter, time to reacclimate after being out of the classroom, over 7 months. And that's what has not been determined yet. This morning, after our first town hall, we had a quick roundtable, and this determining stage B hybrid is the top priority that needs to get worked out, and will get worked out by a week from this Friday. So we want to have what the stage B hybrid looks like to families next week, and just so folks can start planning. Couple items on a hybrid model. As kids start to re-enter, you'll see them listed here below, the arrow. And again, students will attend partial in-person, partial remote learning. On the other days, in Madawan curriculum being run by Madawan staff, support staff, and teachers, and implemented health and safety protocols. Lots of questions coming in around how are we handling symptomatic students where COVID testing is pending the results, students, staff that have tested positive, or symptomatic students and staff that have not been screened yet. And we will be publishing detailed information by the end of this week, first part of next week, on how the district will be handling that. And these are all based on health department recommendations. But cleaning schedules, supplies, distribution will become a much more rigorous endeavor in stage B. It is happening in stage A. And I will add that staff are reporting to school, to classrooms, to instruct remotely. And I don't think I had that in the bullets, but we will have folks in the building in stage A, typically no students. So there will be cleaning crews deployed, but obviously a lot fewer hands and students or people in the building. Again, daily food service running in the hybrid model. That food, obviously, with students on site, will probably be able to be carried out or home by students, and reducing the trips that, hopefully parents have to make into the building. Okay, so let's say we're at October 2nd. The decision is made. We're green light stage C. That begins on October 19th. So at this point, stage C, I know it says full at the top. That's an indication that our plan is fully realized in stage C under phase 4. And so that would mean a Monday through Thursday, full days, in-person instruction for young 5th through 5th grade. Friday would be remote at-home learning. And most likely that's shaping up to be asynchronous. So, there might be individual support kinds of things that are available, but that probably would be at parent discretion. We'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. 6 through 12 would be 2 to 4 full days in-person instruction. Off-site days would be remote learning. And again, a variation of 2 to 4 days. We're giving ourselves a little latitude. We will decide that by October 2nd, so families could have 2 weeks to plan on before the change. But depending on how the hybrid goes in stage B, we want to get into that and see how that operates before we make a decision on how many days, full days, kids will be coming in on stage C. In an earlier document, this question was posed this morning. Why not 5 days? Why are we doing 4 days? And let's say 6 through 12 in stage C is a full 4 day. Let's say K-12 is 4 days in stage C, just for the hypothetically speaking here. That 5th day is really a day that many districts in the area are using for really super aggressive cleaning, moving of furniture, and something more than just your standard deep clean. We had put in a previous document that we would not even consider full 5 days until we were at phase 5. We haven't had exhaustive conversation on that. That is still present in that document. But clearly, if things improve, into October and November, and we're still in stage 4, and our risk factors are being lowered, we clearly, if the need was decreasing to have that full super deep clean day, we would absolutely revisit that. But that's just some rationale on why that fourth day or fifth day off, and it really is strictly cleaning. Couple items on stage C there below. Again, MCS curriculum driven by MCS certified teachers and support staff. You have the same safety protocols going. And one addition here is cohorting. And this is something that is probably easier said than done, but it is strongly encouraged in the Safe Returns plan, as well as from our county health departments, where the more that we can keep kids in a certain group during the day, the less likely the cross-contamination will occur. And so that becomes increasingly difficult as you get into older grades, especially when you've got kids potentially moving between classes. But that is something we're striving to do. And the principals probably will talk a little bit more about what that may look like when we get to the next slide. Couple questions about this that have come up. Why the deadlines? How did the district arrive at the deadlines? Why are we not stretching the deadlines out? I've had questions about that, but I've had more questions about, okay, where did these dates come from? And again, I would go back to the task force and the conversations where these are really moving in 2-week increments, where we knew our outer marker wanted to be 8 weeks to our full deployment, stage C. We did not want to go beyond 8 weeks. We felt like that was the outer marker. Stretching out to a marking period for each stage was too long, we felt. Some districts are doing trimesters. We felt that was just too long, especially in light of the survey data. So from parents, we were trying to strike a reasonable middle ground on safety and getting kids back in a reasonable timeline. So we have this cycle where we're engaged in a stage, we make a decision, 2 weeks later, that decision rolls out. And that 2-week time period is giving families and staff time to adjust to the upcoming stage. We hit the next stage, we're 2 weeks in, we make a decision, 2 weeks later, the next stage rolls out. So we were really intervaling in 2-week segments for planning purposes, internally in the building, and for parents to start getting their head around what that next stage looks like. So that's some rationale on where the dates came from and the importance of those dates, and just the support to hit those targeted dates is very high. And at this point, barring any phase movement from the state or aggressive upticks in cases or an increase in the risk factor, we are planning on rolling these out, these stages at the executable dates. I'm going to hit the pause button briefly right now, and I want to give Jim, John, Jay a chance to comment or add any commentary. Maybe thinking about some of the questions that were already asked this morning, we might be able to save some folks from typing in questions. But anything on this chart?
The one question that I answered over there about why the half days, I put an answer up there for everybody. I hope it's easily understood. In stage A, it's trying to give the kids, good, solid activities for the entire day, but there's flexibility built into that day. So, that will help meet the needs of our families at home.
Right. And I think you'll be able to put a little more meat on the bone here on the next slide.
Yep.
Jim, Jay, anything to add?
I think the bulk of the questions we can answer are really related to the next slide. It gets into the more details about the day and what the day looks like for kids and what the work. Yeah.
We'll get in. I'm going to switch slides on everybody. And when I'm going to quickly work through this, and then when I get to the schedule, this yellow block, I'm going to blow up the screen a little bit. It might be difficult to see. So a couple housekeeping pieces on what you're looking at. This is a little more detail in 5 core areas we will be producing documents like this for every building's plan. Our goal still is to have what we would call granular plans for each building out this week that will have much more detail about what to expect for the remote portions. We're also going to publish similar detailed plans once prior to the face-to-face starting. So there'll be lots of documentation, maybe more than some parents want to read, but we feel it's important to get as much detail out as possible. This is kind of a snapshot overview. Let's start with curriculum instruction in the upper left-hand corner. And some of this is a bit redundant from the first slide. I understand that, but there's a few key things to point out. We did feel it was important to have teachers in the classroom instructing during remote. And this was actually a conversation that originated with staff. And I think that's telling from our staff. Obviously, we're supporting that administratively. I want to be upfront about exceptions that may occur. We are currently, like probably some private businesses have worked through, working out guidelines for exceptions to that. We have full faith in our teaching staff that if an individual is in need of instructing from home, that we'll have clear guidelines, and there's no doubt in our mind that our teachers will surpass those guidelines for performance and professionalism. But there may be exceptions to the being at school piece. These, you can see from that schedule, the instruction is happening in the morning. And so we're going to reference this schedule as we work through these 5 core areas. And like John said, there's a lot of flexibility that will be built into this depending on the grade level. Kindergarten to 5th grade, there's a big change and a big swing. And so hopefully you'll hear some of the unique items that how we're tailoring this as we move up into the grades. I think it's important to note that this content will be delivered by our teachers, that paraprofessionals will be utilized, and in most cases, we will have a paraprofessional on the live session with a teacher to assist. We're currently working through some creative ideas about utilizing our support staff and paraprofessionals for individual instruction, individual support, some small group breakouts during the live sessions. I mean, there's a lot of different ways we can use our support staff, and these are very skilled individuals, but they can also assist with keeping kids engaged and keeping an eye on the monitors and so forth, and just having an extra set of hands and eyes and fingers on the keyboards in these sessions. We are talking about a face-to-face synchronous model for delivering content and instruction. But we also know that we need to record these lessons, pre-record lessons, and have them cataloged. Because just like during a normal day, we are going to have kids that for whatever reason cannot connect for the 9 o'clock math lesson. And again, flexibility. We will work with parents. But we wanted to set a structured schedule for parents and the school to kind of fall back on. This is the day, this is our job, we're getting up, we're getting ready for school, we're engaging. And even though the instruction time may vary inside those blocks, it might be 10 minutes for a kindergartner, it might be 20 for a 5th grader in a math block. We wanted this structure to have this rhythm for the school day. There will be asynchronous offline activities. Students are not required to be in front of the computer all day. And that was a point that came up in the last meeting this morning. Even though there's a 1:30 to 3:45 block, that is not a requirement for kids to be online. Kids might be online. Parents may take advantage of tier interventions, one-on-one digital virtual support. They might want to get online with a teacher and have a quick video conference. We'll get to those afternoons here more in a minute and what teachers are doing, but we're looking at the majority of that contact time up front in the morning at every school, mind you. Assessments, we want to stick close to that traditional day. We will be following the building grade procedure, as we normally would in a traditional setting. We know that feedback is very important, and that was another piece from the survey data in the spring that parents were very interested in. And so we want to provide very timely feedback, and teachers by nature, that's part of their what they do, and that's where the growth opportunities lie on the feedback. Again, adherence to 504s and IEPs, and supports, and then also options for specials to be available. It is possible that the specials may be in the afternoons. I don't anticipate them being every day. I might pause here and let John or Jim jump in and make sure I'm speaking correctly here as well on what I'm saying. Maybe speak to specials.
Okay, I don't mute. All right, I was answering some questions too on the side as I can, so I'm just trying to keep that moving too.
Thank you for doing that.
Yes, in the later L, we'll probably have our specials teachers for the most part. I mean, there might be some exceptions, moving to the student's classroom so that, keeping those cohorts together and minimizing movement.
How would that maybe look virtually?
Virtually, it'll be similar to what they saw in the spring. Those would be asynchronous lessons for the most part for the specials.
Okay.
That might be, though, Randy and folks, that might be a little different for our younger kids. We've talked about a little bit. We embed integrated arts with our young fives and kindergarten teachers. So there's a teacher assigned just to those classes.
Okay.
So the conversation about potentially embedding them into the morning piece, not as for short amounts and rotating those teachers through for integrated arts for young fives and kindergarten. We've talked about that potentially doing a little bit of that as well with first and second grade, and still providing the asynchronous access to specials after the second half of the day for kids as well. It will not be nearly as much time as reading, math, and writing,
right?
But we're looking at trying to provide that in there as a support in that morning time as well. It just isn't listed in that plan. Yeah, it's new discussion for us.
In our elementary task force meetings, we've also talked about some cross-curricular lesson planning, so that those special teachers can be brought in to that, to do some, like maybe a music lesson is integrated in with an ELA lesson or a reading lesson, so that those teachers can be more involved with the kids up front.
Right. Thank you, guys. And I just popped open the chat thread. I really appreciate, Jim, John, and Jay jumping in, trying to keep up with the questions. These are great questions. I want to get through this document, and then we'll get back into the Q&A. When we talk about communication, again, great feedback from the spring from both staff and parents. We want to have very timely responses. We put out a 24-hour rule for response. Typically we have operated with teachers on a 48-hour response. Technology, the tech department really wants to have a very short window of turnaround, because if there are tech issues, that's a connectivity issue, that's a potential disengagement. And so staff in the tech department, we have a phone line over here on the right. We have an email. Those are monitored around the clock. And so we want to keep the information flowing. One of the items that we added in the afternoon, again, lots of open time, is just parent-student teacher conferencing. We envision potentially some one-on-one meetings that might be asked for by a parent more than anything. If a child is struggling in math that day, there will be parapros available virtually in the afternoon. Teachers will be on call, and we just foresee just open communication, pop into a phone call, an email, a virtual meeting. So we really want to. The desire on the school side was pretty unanimous about having these opportunities and times embedded pretty much daily for communication. Yeah, virtual parent conferencing, that's redundant a little bit. Google Meets, Zoom meetings, and those might be referencing more scheduled kinds of items. But we also know that we want to be available if a parent has a question and it's kind of on the fly, and you punch out an email or you send a Google Meet request, that we've got people available to respond to those communication times. When we talk about health and wellness, resources in food service, and you can see some of the bullet points here. We've already talked about food service and wellness check-ins as needed. Our special education department, as well as our social workers, guidance counselors, all of those ancillary or itinerant support staff are busy creating plans and probably already calling families regards to the startup and just making sure we're touching base with families in a routine manner, in providing services and support throughout the remote, stage B and stage C, really the entire year. We will have students who choose to stay full remote, regardless of the stage. I did forget to mention that. That will be an option for the entire year, to stay fully remote. We did talk a little bit about IEP goals will be met, tailored supports as needed, and availability for social worker and guidance. I do want to go off script here a little bit. I know principals get a little nervous when I go off script in these meetings, but I think it's fair to talk a little bit about some of the unique things we're looking at initially, especially for our special education population, students on 504 plans, utilizing our transportation department. We are, of course, in a traditional year, there is a lot of information in IEP reviewing that happens at the beginning of school. That is normal. That is happening right now. So if you are a parent or a guardian with a student that has an IEP or 504, you most likely will be getting called in the next, 3 to 4 days, 5 days, into next week, with somebody from the special education department, a caseload worker, a teacher, special ed director, checking in on the family, talking about the current IEP, the goals. And so some of those IEPs were mid-processed. At the shutdown last year, we're looking at how to finish those and close those. Some of the IEPs may need to be rewritten. The goals may need to be adjusted for a remote setting. We're well aware of that and working through adjusting those goals based on parent and team decision making. One of the creative things we're looking at is after we get through that first week, probably looking at setting up some type of rotation for our special education population, initially 504 students, to receive supports on site in some kind of scheduled manner utilizing our transportation. So that would be a doorstop to a school door, pickup, drop off. And so that's a very exciting piece that we're adding in from the spring, as well as, paras being available in the afternoons for digital conferencing and so forth. But more information will be coming out on that, and we would look to expand that through the stages to our at-risk population. Some folks might be wondering, what when you say at-risk, what are you talking about? And we use these terms all the time, and we sometimes forget to clarify and define them. So an at-risk student is not a special education student, but it might be a student that is showing a need for additional support and core content, can often be behavioral supports and those types of things. So in case you were wondering, that's who we're referring to when we use those terms. Quickly here, I know I'm talking fast, I apologize. Technology, early elementary will be utilizing the Seesaw technology management software platform. Every other school, later L, middle school, high school, will be Google Classroom. And so we definitely heard feedback on the survey about limiting the different kinds of platforms and programs and apps that we're using. And so we heard that loud and clear, and Seesaw is just a much better designed tool for our youngest learners. And Jim probably will talk more about that in a minute. Technology support connections there. The remote plan does need a device. It does need internet. And again, the reminder that devices and Wi-Fi are available through our MCS technology department. All right, quickly, and then we're gonna start answering questions. Whoop. Okay. Let's get that a little bigger. Okay, so let's talk briefly about the schedule. You can see we've essentially got 3 learning blocks at the elementary, and this is the same for both buildings. And we've got a startup at 8:45, trying to mirror a lot of those startup activities, calendar time, circle time, maybe a silent reading, read aloud. And then school, each building will determine, what core is getting done in these blocks. That's still getting worked out. But a general breakdown here under 9 o'clock, this is kind of just giving you an idea. There will be a lesson, a video. The teacher will be online, live. The paraprofessional will be online during these instructional blocks. And these bullets just kind of give you an idea of how this time might be broken down. Some kind of guided or independent practice. We know that breaks are important. This can be a stressor for kids. So we're going to take it nice and slow with lots of flexibility. And you can see this replicated in each of the blocks. The elementary does have a 10:30 to 11:15 built-in teacher open Zoom meeting. And then we'll round out the morning with one last live learning session. Some lunch and activity time at home. And this is on the full remote, mind you. And then these afternoon pieces would be at parent request, at teacher request, or maybe not at all. There may be kids, and maybe the majority are asynchronous or completely off the computer in the afternoon, and they may want to do their asynchronous items in the evening. So lots of flexibility here, and these are just some examples of what could be used in this time. At this point, I want to pause because there was a lot of question in the first meeting about, is my kindergartner going to be on the computer from 8:45 to noon? Jim, why don't you respond to that? Because I think you had a great answer about how these are generalities and definitely will be tailored by age group.
Yeah, what we've talked about, in hindsight, I wish I would have added something, a little asterisk in there to say this is really a target for our youngest students, as far as our young fives and kindergarten students in particular, who are 5 years old, who many have maybe have had preschool or GSRP experience, but many have never been in school before. This is a whole new experience for them, and it's very taxing. Our teacher input has been that in a normal year, in a normal face-to-face year even, the bulk of the time of the day for the kids, the first week or so, even longer, is spent working out routines, getting kids into knowing how to do school, how to work together, developing relationships, and don't jump right into heavy content right away. They do some, but it's a gradual release into that. So for this schedule, for an upper elementary kid, even a second grader, could be a fairly close proximity to where they could start. Our young fives kids, the feedback is for many of them, they struggle to stay attentive for that long of a time. So the lessons in those blocks, we're going to work to build stamina for those kids so that they can expand and do that more and keep them with us. The feedback is in the spring, not just from Matawan, but other districts that I've been in contact with said the youngest kids who are so dependent on adults, parents or other adults or siblings or whomever to do this type of online work we might start the first period and then disappear. I mean, they just didn't come back for the rest of the day. And part of that is getting them into a routine and building that stamina for them to do this. So that stamina is an issue face to face. It's compounded even more trying to do this online with those young kids, again, like I said, who are so dependent on adults to make this work.
Right. John, any information to provide on those live blocks from the upper or later elementary? Oh, you're muted, John.
I just make fun of people who do that too. No, we'll have the teachers will be in and out during those blocks with the kids. They're gonna more than likely be using the Zoom format where they could put kids into small groups, and if we have, for example, a paraprofessional helping, they could lead a group. I was in some groups actually in the spring where there were student-led groups, and then they come back and report out. It was really, really slick how they did it. But yeah, the other thing is, like, they're going to get plenty of brain breaks. We understand there's got to be some paper and pencil work thrown in there. It can't all be on a screen. If you have, the other thing is, if you have a child who's struggling with the online aspect of it, and most kids really are great at it, probably better than we are. They're digitally adept. But if you need something printed out and you don't have a printer at home, just let your teacher know, and we'll work with you on that, to get it. The nice thing about this remote learning versus what we had in the spring, we were all locked down in the spring. We couldn't even get at the building, to help you. So we're going to have staff in the building. We're going to have, support staff in the building. There's a lot more that we can do for you during this time. So we're kind of excited about that aspect of it.
Right. Thank you, John. I see a lot of folks are Jim and John and Jay kind of jumping in on many of these questions. I'm going to scroll back up here at the beginning. There was a question about criteria for determining stage movement. I probably went through that too quickly. I'm going to get back up. And this box on this screen really contains two objective pieces and one more subjective. So the criteria that we're referencing is that we'll be looking at would be what phase are we in as set by the governor's office, the task force, and then specific county level data. We're referring to both of the health departments in terms of what the risk level assessment is. And there are multiple risk levels that are assessed used on criteria of their own at the health department. And I'm sure cases, the amount of cases is part of determining that risk factor. We are currently in a moderate high risk categorization. So those are the two objective pieces. Both counties do a pretty good job displaying cases, positive cases, recovery rates, and so forth. The subjective piece would be building safety considerations, staff, parent feedback. I see another question on here just about the 14-day, the 2-week cycle. Is it too short? The incubation period is 7 to 14 days for symptoms. Are we staying in stage A and B long enough? And that's a valid question. We went back and forth on that. And that's where, I'm going to refer back to those criteria that, if we move to phase 3, it's a moot point. We're face-to-face only, or remote only, no face-to-face. But if we're in a phase 4 and the local departments elevate our risk level, that means the cases are going up. I mean, that would cause us to pause and really reflect on, is it the best time, the safest time to move to the next stage? But those are the criteria we're using. And, there have been a lot of questions about the data that's coming out from the health agencies and the Pediatric Association, the CDC, our local health departments. they're not always matching up. I mean, there's a difference on thoughts on mask wearing. There's a difference on thoughts of social distancing, what's acceptable. There's differing opinions on how susceptible children are, and all. I mean, there's all kinds of conflicting or opposing data. And as a district, we're not here to debate that data on those websites. And I've had many folks want to debate the data on the websites, and we're just not in a position to do that. We're going to go by the phase that the governor's office has placed us in, and our local risk assessment on the health entities. So just a little background and rationale on where those criteria are at, and yeah, I appreciate the sensitivity on those questions, for sure. Jay, Jim, John, and you perusing these questions, are you seeing multiples coming up that we may want to address?
There is one here, and I just want to, I don't know, express my empathy to all the parents who have numerous kids at home trying to juggle this, and I want you to lean on us as much as you can to help you. We're going to be flexible. If you got 3 kids at home and they're sharing devices, and you're trying to manage a house or work at home or things like that, just know that we're going to work with you. Our teachers, I mean, I know of many of my teachers in the later L who were putting in 12-hour plus days in the spring during that time, and I'm not suggesting that they be expected to do that now. We hope to get into a normal routine with this, but just know that there's multiple ways to get a hold of your teacher. They're gonna have me on speed dial if we need to get a resource to help you. I'm gonna try and be thinking out of the box all day, to help people. There's no easy answers to this for you, and we have a couple of questions on there. I have this, I'm dealing with this in my own family, with my grandchildren and my daughter-in-law. It's tough. So, hang in there. We will get through this together, and we will help you with it.
Right. Thank you, John. One of the questions, what's the point of the half day? What will kids accomplish in a few hours in class? Great question. I'm assuming in class is the in-person and hybrid, if we do a hybrid half day. The thought there is really more acclimation, getting used to process, procedure, social distancing, all of the things on spacing in the hallways and traffic flow and mask wearing. That's if we, have half the student body there. Well, actually in either scenario, but that was the thinking more on this half day, is more of an acclimation piece. The struggle we're having with the hybrid model is, how does instruction look when kids are on the remote side and their teachers are instructing the other half of their class during the day? And so, one of the things we're exploring is that these half days on site would be afternoons. We would stick to full remote engagement and learning in the morning, and then half of the student body would come into school in the afternoon, and we'd focus more on supplemental kinds of things and procedural kinds of things, getting to know each other and all of those kinds of items. The challenge on that is scheduling, busing, parents juggling what days their kids are coming in. We would try to keep families together, obviously, in that hybrid model. So it's to limit disruption to the families. The flip side of that is that we bring all kids in several days a week. Again, the idea there is slowly acclimating kids and staff after what could be 7-8 months not being on site. So just some of the rationale on what we were thinking through on that. And again, we are working to have that stage B figured out in 2 parents by the end of next week. Lots of discussion happening right now on that. Several questions about paperwork or like packet work. Also, I want to pause just briefly. If you look in the chat thread, there is an email that was posted by Ashley. If folks are more comfortable sending an email to our secretary, she will forward that to John to the panelists. So guys, watch your email, and then we can go from there. Okay. Paper packets. Lots of questions on paper packets. We know, I think John already alluded to working out a process for those folks that don't have a printer at home that need the lessons replicated. And I don't know if John or Jim can speak more to that about what the plans are at this time.
We're looking at on a weekly basis, starting really I think the 28th, that Friday, that first Friday, to send home materials that are needed for kids to complete necessary materials that would be supplemental to complete the work that is being taught online. We're not looking at a bunch of piles of worksheets, just a busy work, but materials that are directly used. It could be letter charts, could be sound charts, could be pictures, diagrams, things that are needed for or types of manipulative devices for math that would be needed for kids to work on better at home, that parents couldn't be difficult to reproduce or even copy and do that type of thing. And we're looking at creating a weekly schedule, likely as a pickup on Fridays, as long as we're online, to provide those resources. So that's in the plan for next week to get that started. For the first round of that will be, we're looking at August 28th, that first Friday.
Okay.
And it's a little different in the later L, as the kids are a bit older. There is more of a dependence on the digital side. However, like I said earlier, if parents are in need of something printed, the work for that week or something like that, we'll be happy to accommodate that.
Right. All right, let's work through some of these questions here. There has been some question about daycare and families that have students in daycare. We actually have met with several daycare operators, and actually we'll be meeting with more of them later in this week, having discussions around how can we support our daycares. And at this point, we're working out areas to support them in technology and wireless. For some of our daycares, they're not equipped with the amount of technology or wireless they need. So we will be working to support our daycares with curriculum, devices, wireless access, and so forth. We know there's a fair share of families that have their students in daycare during the day, and we want to do everything we can to support that. Some have asked about the district supplementing daycare costs. We can't directly supplement those costs, but we are working on what I would say second-hand information from some other area districts that have indicated there potentially is federal grant money available. I don't know if that's through the CARES Act or what, but this just kind of came on our radar a couple of days ago. And so we are working to find out the details on that. I don't have any other details than telling families that potentially is out there, and we're trying to figure out if that's legitimate or not. So we'll keep families updated on the daycare situation. Let's see here. There were questions about grouping kids together as we move into hybrid or face-to-face. The most recent survey that was sent out Friday and asking families based on the current information, what would you choose? What are you leaning toward, staying full remote for the year, or moving into the hybrid face-to-face model? And we're using that data to help craft class lists. One of the things we're trying to minimize is, as we move into stage B or C, minimize or eliminate students and teacher movement. At this point, I think as of this morning, either John or Jim indicated, we roughly have 40 to 50 students per grade level indicating they are interested in full-time remote learning for the entire year. And so what we're working through is scheduling those teachers and students together so we don't have full-time remote students having to switch teachers as we move through the stages. John, Jim, I don't know if you have any more up-to-date information on that scheduling, or maybe you could speak to when class lists will be published. I know that's probably a question that may come up if it hasn't already.
Class at the later hour, the class list will probably be published, I'm going to guess by the middle of next week at the latest. Carrie's working on those as we speak. They're a work in process right now, because we're taking all of the kids who want the remote option and placing them in their own sections. And as you mentioned, we have like 2 sections in each grade right now that would be remote. That parents are interested in, like possibly all year remote. So that's pretty cool.
Same for the early L. We're in the process of working on that the rest of this week. Our target is Tuesday to be able to get out to parents. It may be Wednesday, but we're trying to shoot for Tuesday to get the class assignments and make sure everybody has that as early as we can next week.
Thank you, guys. Checking email here. Question on schools of choice transportation. School transportation will be available for schools of choice when we get to the appropriate stages. I know earlier in the summer there was an announcement that was put out that information would no longer, or that transportation would no longer be provided. We have since reviewed that and changed that back to the how it was before in previous years, and we will be transporting schools of choice students under what I would call the original model, closest stop to where you're at that you can get to. Question, let's see here. Question on if stage B, if on September 4 it is decided not to go to stage B, what's the next targeted deadline? I think at the very latest, we would look at the next date, which would be the 21st of September. I don't have that document up anymore. But I think we would try to stick to that every 2 weeks. We haven't talked a lot about that yet, but we have those dates in place, and it just makes sense to kind of stay in that rhythm. There was a question about why, if other schools are offering face-to-face, and why stay in our district. Fair question. I believe every other school in Van Buren, with the exception of Matawan and South Haven, are in some type of face-to-face. I think the majority of them are 5 or 4 day face-to-face. We haven't had a roundtable in a week. I haven't seen information about districts changing since our last roundtable of superintendents, but that's the latest information I have. And we certainly understand that a remote start, even though we'll be at the earliest in a face-to-face hybrid model by mid-September, may not work for families. And while we don't want to lose families, we certainly understand that if it's not working and a face-to-face is needed, we hope to win you back someday. But we strongly feel that a graduated release into face-to-face is the safest option right now for staff and students. But very, very fair question. Let's see here. John, Jay, anything on your end you want to jump in on?
On the questions, I did answer one about grade level planning. That's our plan at the later L. Jim can speak for the early L, but we are going to be planning as a grade level so that, all the sections are doing, the same lessons, same standard, that type of thing.
Yeah, we're similar. And then some of the questions about parents asking about how can we support them trying to coordinate on at-home learning with multiple kids with different schedules going on. Perfectly legitimate question. It's the same question I'd be asking if I was there, would do it with my kids if they're at that stage. Like John said earlier, we'll do what we can to help in any form or fashion that we can. But I just understand I don't have a great answer for that question because I understand that it's a huge challenge that's going to happen with parents having to do that.
Yeah, I'll jump in really quick. I did send some contact information to some of the folks that were asking some probably personal situations regarding special education needs for their child. So you should receive an email in the thread there that you'll want to reach out to talk about those next steps. A couple of questions that came out with regard to state assessments that I noticed. At this time, for the elementary, our M-STEP is not scheduled until the spring. So we very much have our fingers crossed that we'll be back in school on a full-time schedule by the time that rolls around. A little bit different for at the high school level. They are planning on the SAT, PSAT coming up here in October. And so we would be, still working out the logistics, but by that point, we're hoping that we're in stage C and able to have students back in school on a regular basis. With regard to other, assessments that are going to be provided at this time in the remote, any sort of formative assessments that are going to be provided are probably going to be done virtually. I don't know, Jim and John, if you want to add to that as well. I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, that would be the plan, from our standpoint. Like whether it's an inter-unit type formative assessment or the summative assessment at the end of a unit, we should be able to handle that digitally and online. I'm sure that as a parent, you'll get plenty of notice when those are going to happen. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody when that does occur.
Yeah, and I'll add one of the reasons we went with the learning management system Seesaw is that it's more age appropriate, allows us more authentic responses from kids who are younger, particularly kids who are just learning to read and write. Google Classroom it'll be very difficult for kids without 100% parent support at that age level to provide some responses and for us to assess what they learn. Seesaw provides some different ways of kids being able to draw a picture, respond, auditorily to responses and things, that record those and send them back and forth between teachers and students, which is a benefit for that platform that we're going to use and roll out.
A question in the chat thread about students from the same neighborhood potentially being placed in the same virtual class in order to encourage small group learning. I would just point that out to the building principals if you haven't seen that. I think that's a fantastic idea.
Yep.
We probably can work on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put a response in there to contact the deans at either building who are doing the class placements, and we'll do our best to work with you on that. It's complicated, but it's not impossible.
Right. Question about needed school supplies and textbooks. Well, I don't know if the textbook question came up in the morning session. Are we thoughts on textbooks at the elementary us, and I'm assuming under the remote startup, maybe this question is geared toward.
Yeah, that's something I'm going to have to talk with the teachers about. We don't use a ton of textbooks. A lot of the things that we have are digital, but I think they do have a greater dependence at the early L on those types of books.
Yeah, we don't have a particular basal type book for literacy. We use a variety of level readers and books that we're working with Laura Ballard and our library media specialists on ways we can get books safely into kids' hands and brought back to school safely and handled well, and with quarantining the books for a period of time to be able to distribute those. We will have, our math program does have an at-home workbook support that we'll be sending home with students to use. But again, it's still digital. A lot of the lessons will be accessed through our Seesaw program for students and parents to be able to access.
And I just got a note from one of my teachers saying that, John, we don't use textbooks. They teach a lot of subjects, so you never know. There is a question here about open houses and picture day. Picture day is up in the air right now, pending when we return. We definitely want to do something to reacclimate the kids to the building. I wish we could just say, hey, everybody come, we're going to give you all a big hug. We're ready, but we'll figure that out. We have, before they come back in a hybrid or whatever the next step will be, we'll have something figured out on their reacclimation to the facility.
Good, thank you. Let's, Jim, did you talk a little bit about, see some questions here on specifically kindergarten, and we know this is going to be for many of them their first experience with quote unquote traditional school. This may be some thoughts on how your kindergarten staff is working to make this as special as we can, given the remote start.
Yeah, that's a big issue. Their focus is going to be doing what they can to connect with parents. We'll work on one of the things that we're going to talk about is, and we've already talked about today, the staff is having within the first week or two at the most, making sure that every teacher has a virtual one-on-one with the parent and students to get connected with them and get to know them and try and troubleshoot anything that's going on. We'll work on a schedule with that. We'll have some meet and greet types of videos being sent to families to introduce themselves. We're even talking about doing some type of even a car rodeo, trip through the parking lot, and so kids can see their teachers and actually see who they look like and not just a picture on the screen. And so it's not, so it makes it real. So, and then there might be some other options that we're still considering too to make that work and make that connection. Because that's really the hardest part for us is trying to figure out, well, how do we make this work for kids who haven't really been in school before in this environment. It makes a little more sense for kids who are older, but not a whole lot, not a great deal more, but a little more. But for the kindergarten young 5 kids, that's a major concern, and our teachers are very aware of it and working trying to figure out the best way to make that the best situation for the kids and the families.
Randy, you need to turn your audio back on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Jay, I was asking you, we had a question on count day. Do you have any up-to-date information on count day, or how any guidance from the state on how we're handling that?
Yeah, great question. We are still waiting on the official guidance from the state about what the expectations are going to be for count day, if they're going to expect us to record students as through our pupil accounting manual as a 50D, which is very similar to what a virtual student would be. You know, like if we had a student that, you know, at the high school that was taking all Michigan virtual type classes. So we're still sifting through, waiting to get kind of the final guidance. The current executive order that was put out back in the springtime has basically relaxed all of the days and attendance and minutes pieces all the way up until September 30th. And so at this time, up until that date, you know, the days and attendance minutes pieces are, you know, we're in good order, but with count day, I believe being October 7th, we're still waiting to hear exactly what the expectation is going to be for reporting.
Okay, thanks, Jay. Question about social distancing in the hallway, in the chat thread here.
I can address that, Randy. What we're going to do, they will have very limited, until we get to phase 5, limited movement in the hallways. So we're looking at having the students, I think both at the early end, the later elementary school, enter the building and exit the buildings through what the later elementary calls them their cubby rooms. We call them the mud rooms, where the doors that connect 2 classrooms together to limit hundreds of kids going through and out the same door, same entryways, and even exiting for like a recess, or if they go to PE out that way and back in that way. Very limited movement in the hallways. Specials teachers will come to the classrooms to provide that, to limit movement from kids from classroom cohorts. We call mudroom partners at the early elementary. Do that. Kids can go outside for PE when it's good weather, and music when it's good weather. And so we can limit quite a bit of the movement of that and control that during the day at both buildings.
Okay. At the first meeting, there was some question about comment about mask wearing, and I know in a remote model, obviously the kids are not in session. Staff are. We're required to wear masks in the building in common areas. When we look at a stage B and stage C, under phase 4, it is strongly recommended for young 5 through 5th grade, recommended to wear masks in the classroom. It is required 6 through 12 for the entire day, with the exception of, you know, eating lunch. The district has made a decision that in a stage B and C, we will be requiring young 5 through 5th grade to wear masks in the classroom. They have to anyways in passing areas, on the bus, in common areas, but the decision has been made to require that when we come back to hybrid and stage B and C. You know, one of the things that the principals and elementary teams have been working on is very frequent breaks to take masks off. And I would imagine they're building in at least a break an hour, if not more, getting kids outside, fresh air. We're investigating getting some semi-permanent tents up, just, you know, to shelter from sun or those kinds of things, to maybe have class outside when teachers are able to, just to keep that cohort movement up and getting the breaks for these kids, because we anticipate it's going to be a struggle for young kids to wear masks and so forth. So just in case that, I didn't see that question coming up, but we did want to put that information out for families to be aware of. Follow up on that: would face shields suffice instead of a mask? The current, yeah, great question. We've asked that as well. The current guidance, I believe, from our health departments, is that this face shield is an appropriate supplement to a face covering, but the face covering must be worn in the required areas and protocols. Maybe that question is around strongly recommended. If a mask is strongly recommended, will the shield suffice instead of the mask? if that's the question, that's a good question. We haven't considered that. I'm going to make a note of that. Yeah, I don't have an answer for you on that.
I can chime in a little bit.
Go
just
ahead, John, please.
I have access to some information on this as my wife works in healthcare in a school environment, and the face shields don't provide, as they go across the face, they don't provide the necessary covering that a mask would cover. Ideally, they'd like to see in a mask and a face shield, because then your eyes are protected. But that's pretty onerous to do something like that. So, but yeah, the masks are definitely more of a stronger defense.
Yep, thanks for that, John. A follow up on the social distancing. I read the rest of that, just kind of looking at that full question. Health Department has issued guidance on what qualifies as a violation of social distancing, and it is being within the recommended spacing for more, I believe Van Buren Cass district is saying for more than 12 minutes without a mask. It differs between health departments. The minutes, I've heard 15, I've heard 12, I believe, from our health department. So the question about hallways, that's the guidance we're receiving, that if kids are masks and they're walking by each other in hallways, they're not within that for more than 12 minutes, they're not violating. So we're following the guidance from health departments on that, or that would be one of the guiding pieces on that. There have been questions, not necessarily tonight, but in general on how is the district going to respond to exposures and all that. I did allude earlier that we'll be publishing a document on how we're handling those cases, and if there is an exposure, that's a notification. Symptoms, or there's a positive test, we either notify or will be notified by the health department. Most likely they would notify us, and then they will take over that process, and they will dictate to schools what the impact radius is. And so they will look at contact tracing and probably a host of other items, and then they will let the district know what the isolation or quarantine process is. So we have received questions about who's making that call. That is the health department dictating to us what we will be doing. Question about, can we change between remote and face-to-face? The answer is yes. We are asking families, if they can make a 9-week commitment either way, that would help in our planning. But clearly, if families are in a remote setting and they want to come back to face-to-face or vice versa, we're going to work with families to facilitate that and make it happen. So good question on that. Just lost that. I don't know about. Physical play interactions kids will be able to have, I'm assuming in a stage B or stage C, for example, tag on the playground. Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think the guidance from the health department, I haven't seen anything specifically about playgrounds. I'm sure we will, but we have seen guidance about keeping classes together and minimizing contact and violating, 4 to 6 feet. I think that would exclude tag. Unfortunately, I see your son is asking that. Right. So it sounds like an uneventful recess time. I know that's not what your son wants to hear. Yep. Good question though. Is it possible to decrease class size to space out kids to 6 feet apart, sitting at their desks so they don't have to wear masks? That's all going to depend on the amount of kids in the classroom. Obviously, we can space out. I'm generalizing here based on kind of walking around looking and moving furniture in the elementaries. I think 15, 16 desks. We can get a 6-foot radius. John, Jim, is that right? So
Yeah,
that's where the
right.
kind of A/B model was coming at hybrid, splitting the student body. Kids that have masks on, if you're within 6 feet or you're between 3 and 4, clearly having a mask on is better. There are districts that are starting 5-day face-to-face all kids, and they're not requiring masks. So we've got schools doing all different variations on the startup and masks. What are they doing with masks? At this point, I would anticipate us starting out the hybrid, whatever it is, wearing masks, K-5 in the classroom. Obviously, when we get to phase 5, I believe the mask wearing moves to recommended down from strongly recommended. So you're seeing a gradual release of those. But I think that's where we're at right now, and we probably will stay there on the masks. And I see I disappointed your son with the tag response. I apologize. Sounds like a fun thing to do right now.
We're going to have to create some new games.
Right. Right.
Virtual tag.
Right, and there were a couple of questions about the calendar and why are we not moving it later? I know that's a controversial decision to start on the 24th, and that decision was made in light of an overall calendar that was settled with the union. I mean, there was an agreement internally with staff and teachers and at the board level on the calendar. I don't by any way want to imply that I wasn't aware of communication that went out about the 31st. I was aware of that prior to my arrival. We did have a conversation and circle back, should we delay the start, after it was already announced on the 24th, and given the plans that were coming together and the model, we just didn't feel that one additional week and starting was going to have a dramatic impact on our plan, our return plan. So we decided to leave the start date as is. Question about starting school face-to-face or online. There was a survey link that went out where you could indicate which preference families have right now. I am going to probably send out a reminder with that link that is still open. The other direct model, I'm sure our principals wouldn't mind if there was a direct email sent your way about that. We could easily drop that into the survey data. I see John, Jim, are you okay with that?
Yeah, no problem.
That if a family wanted to just email you directly about their preference right now, we could do that.
Yeah, no problem.
Ask that you send a reply confirming that so families know. I know there's a lot of emails coming in.
Our front office was like a call center today. It was literally, calling parents all day long.
Right, and so absolutely, when in doubt, reach out to a building principal, get a hold of a secretary. I've been forwarding emails to building principals as well. Some folks are emailing me directly. That's completely fine. We're going to make sure that communication gets to the right home. Another question about switching in the middle of the year or semester. Let me read this here carefully. It looks a little different. My understanding of the latest question there is starting the year in remote. I don't know if I'm understanding the question. I'm going to try to answer that. Families can move in between the plans. We would just encourage as much advance notice as possible. I mean, we have floated out a 9-week commitment, but we understand if it's not working, it's not working, and we want it to work. So we're going to transition students. We always just caution parents with a lot of mobility, just like switching classes in a traditional year is can be a disruption more to the person that's moving. But we understand these are extenuating times and circumstances. And we want that flexibility for you. Target date to achieve 5-day face-to-face. Yeah, no, the target date for 5-day face-to-face, as stated in earlier documentation, would be configured at phase 5. It's possible that could move sooner if conditions are really improving. It is possible that we could move from a stage A to stage C. But again, we want to provide, plenty of advance notice to families for those movements to prepare. John, Jim, I know we're at this point, we're about 15 over the allotted time. I do want to make sure we get as many answered as possible. We are compiling all of these questions. We might have to group some of them together, but we will be releasing a frequently asked questions document with the elementary focus from both meetings. I give us a day or two to get this compiled and cleaned up and answered, but we will be sending all of these questions out. We also will be posting the recorded sessions. But John, Jim, any questions that you've got coming in?
There was one question why we didn't push back the start time 6 weeks, and I think it's primarily because we still have a 180-day mandate for a school year, and that would have pushed kids going into school into next July. By doing that. So I don't think that would have been palatable either.
Yeah. Hey, Randy, I did want to jump in really quick. There's a series of questions that I think I can kind of couple into one. There's a question about differentiation of instruction for individualizing instruction for students, not just from an intervention standpoint, but also from an extension standpoint. A question about how parapros would be used in kind of the afternoon, and then also one that was related to tier 2 intervention supports that were provided last year, and how do we get the ball kind of rolling with that. So I guess I wanted to start with, this is coming into a school year unlike any that any parents or students or educators have ever been a part of. There's going to be a significant amount of review of looking at what are some of the gaps in learning that students have had as a result of missing as much time as we did in a face-to-face model at the end of the year. That is definitely going to be a focus area, and so we're going to be looking at how are we immediately scheduling and providing targeted instructional supports for students right out of the gate. And because we're going to be looking at what are some of those foundational skills from last year that we need students to be able to really build on before we can even start thinking about what their current grade levels content and skills are going to be, the critical things that they're looking at. The other piece at the same time is in that afternoon session, we're looking at, what kind of extension opportunities can we provide for students that maybe, are on the other end where they already have those foundational skills, and how can we push them further? Those are going to be great opportunities for teachers in the afternoon, for paraprofessionals to be able to engage in kind of that one-on-one setting. John, Jim, if you guys want to add, feel free.
I think you got it covered.
Yeah, that's the plan, is to work and use all of our resources that are available to us to reach out to families and kids throughout the day to provide either individual or small group support and target that support as quickly as we can. We have people who are already working on doing that as far as behavioral types of support, as far as social emotional supports, mental, those kinds of things, and also the academic piece. So yeah, that's something that we're going to continue. This model will allow us to do that. In ways that maybe in a lot of similar ways that we could have.
Excellent. Thanks for chiming in. Just want to respect the time this evening and start to bring the conversation to a close. We are, like I indicated, releasing a more detailed plan from each building regarding the remote start specifically this week. So stay tuned for that. We'll get that out on School Messenger. We will be releasing an FAQ document on questions from both of the elementary sessions today. Give us a couple of days on that. We will be posting this video recording in the AM session as well. Those have not been posted yet, but most likely that will be through a YouTube link. And so you can distribute those to folks that you may know that couldn't chime in and listen tonight. And several questions just about who to reach out to in terms of communication. I would initially, I mean, if it's very detailed building level questions, start with your building principal. And if they're district level, you could refer those to me or Mr. Larner, or you could refer everything to me. Or I think we're working very diligently to forward emails to the right individuals, so folks are getting the answers that they need in a timely manner. So look for those series of communications coming out this week. And I want to give Jim and John just a moment for a closing thought or reminder, and then we will gavel the conversation here tonight.
Well, I just want to say thank you once again, and I'll tell you what Randy told us as we were working on planning this, and how difficult it is to do remote learning right. And this is far harder on us as educators than it would be having your kids in the building face to face. But know that we're doing it, for safety, for everyone's sake, for the staff safety, for your child's safety. And we're going to do it well. We are going to do it well. So don't hesitate to reach out, ask questions. My door's always open. Please let me know if you have any concerns. Thank you.
Yeah, and from my end, I'll express just how great it's been working with the staff at the early elementary already. They are trying their best to come up with the best way to support your kids when they can't work with them face to face. And that's really, I'm amazed at what I've seen the teachers do at this level, because none of us at the primary grades ever had a class or even a thought about how would you plan to do online learning with 5-year-olds. This is so far outside of the realm of what they would have ever expected, or I would have ever expected, and your parents ever expect, that that's hard to even fathom. But they're really up to the challenge, and they so badly want to have your kids with them. We had the young fives in kindergarten screening yesterday, and it was like the only normal thing they've had since March. So you could see the joy of just being able to work with a kid and be able to do that. And so we're looking forward to that. We're going to get there, and I hope people stick with us. We're going to come out better because of this. I think instructionally, we're going to be a much better spot, and we're learning so much from this. And I know that's the reason I came to Mattawan, because of the community and the feeling of community in the building and the area. And I just hope everyone can stick with us until we get to where we can get everybody face to face again. So thanks, guys.
Thanks. Jay, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for your participation tonight. There's so many great questions, that are helping us to be thinking about what are the scenarios out there that we need to be aware of. Just really appreciate the time, and this is an extremely complicated scenario. We appreciate everyone's patience and understanding and grace through this process. Our goal is that we are going to provide the best educational opportunity in the safest educational environment that we possibly can. And you're going to get absolutely our 100% commitment to that.
Thanks, Jay. And I won't belabor this. I do want to thank everybody for their time and commitment. Please reach out, keep the questions coming, look for the additional information coming. And we very much do appreciate your time here tonight, and wish you a safe, happy evening as the sun's getting ready to set here in an hour and a half or so. And we wish you a strong finish to the week. If you have middle school or high school students, we do have our town hall tomorrow for middle school focus, 10 a.m., 6 p.m. And then on Thursday, high school focus, 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. again as well. So with that, I will bid you good night and farewell. And I'll turn the controls over to Ashley. And this may be an abrupt departure from the meeting. It always is, but thank you again, everybody.